Welcome back. We're discussing the Trump tariff threat, which he has now made good on. And Canada is saying they're retaliating. They'll have retaliatory tariffs. And joining me to unpack this is Dr. Ian Lee. Dr. Lee, just before we went to commercial, we're discussing, I guess, some of the responses we've heard in a very, low level from Canadian politicians, some alleging that Trump doesn't know what he wants and he doesn't know where he's going with this agenda. But there seems to be a blueprint that we can all access. And this seems to be not the reality that in fact, his administration knows exactly what they want.
Exactly. And again, I'm not defending his vision, but let me be very clear. They have a very, very clear vision to, quote, reform the entire international economic financial system. That's the antithesis of what we're saying in Canada. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't have any vision, doesn't know where he's going. I went looking for his paper by Stephen Marin, and it just blew me over. I mean, I thought, oh my God, like this is radical. This is audacious. I'll get right to the chase. And he's clearly speaking as on behalf of or representing the views of Trump and the Trump administration. They argue that the post-1945 economic international system that was created at the end of the Second World War by the American government, because they were the superpower, called the Bretton Woods system, sometimes architecture, and sometimes simply called multilateralism. All countries are equal, you create trading agreements, and you all abide by the rules of the game. We all know that. Trump and the Trumpians believe that this system has caused damage to the United States. They believe that, and they use this word, friend and foe alike, have used the international architecture of Bretton Woods to harm American interests. How so? Because they have taken advantage of the Americans of getting full and open access to the largest economy in the world. But these countries have, in their own markets, have said, wait a minute, we're not going to let you guys come into all of our markets. We're going to put restrictions on them, just like we do on airlines and on telecom and on agricultural supply management. And so they believe that this has caused unfairness. And on top of that, they repeatedly state, we have been paying the bill, almost the entire bill, of defending the international system in terms of national defense. This year, the U.S. is spending $1 trillion on national defense. That's their budget. If you go back from 45 until now, they've spent trillions upon trillions, and they argue everyone else has been free riding, not just Canada. All the Western allies have been free riding on them. And they say, we are going to reform the system using tariffs. And then they go into the weeds and into the details. So that is what they're up to. They want to change the international economic system and force the Canadas and the Germanys and the Frances, and et cetera, to open up their economies that restrict access by American corporations to those respective economies. That is their.
Yeah, just one question, because I'm familiar with Bretton Woods, but for some of our viewers who aren't, and I think you did a good job to kind of outline it, maybe you could share with us what was the political and economic climate at that moment post World War II, which necessitated Bretton Woods, an agreement like Bretton Woods.
I've studied it. I wasn't alive then, but my late father served in the Second World War as an RAF bomber pilot. And he taught me a lot about the Second World War, and I became fascinated by it, and I read on this. In 1945, Germany had been bombed, quite, let's be blunt, into the 10th century. They had dropped the nuclear bomb on Japan. And the United States was so powerful. It was 50% of the world's GDP, one country. That's how dominant the United States was. It was beyond superpower status. It was beyond the Roman Empire status. That's how powerful it was. And so President Roosevelt said, we must create an international system of interlocking connectivity to make sure that we never have a Second World War again in the future. We want to create an architecture with international multilateral institutions called the United Nations, called the International Monetary Fund, called the World Bank, and the World Health Organization, and the GATT that led to the World Trade Organization. All of them were designed to enmesh all these countries in a system of international law and trade and currency and financial settlements to make sure that we didn't have a world war again. And the system, by the way, has worked very, very well from 1945 until now. But the architect of that system, and still the world's superpower is the United States, and they increasingly feel hard done by, and they feel that they've been exploited by other countries that have all the other countries of the world that have benefited from this system disproportionately at American expense. We may disagree, but this is what is in his head, not my head,
Okay.
his head.
And so
He's
when
the
we
president.
no, absolutely. And that's why I think it's important. That's why we have this discussion. So we know where are they coming from? So then, because at the end of the day, we're going to have world leaders sit down and hash this out. We're going to pick this up in
Yes.
just a moment.